I want to welcome everybody to our presentation this afternoon, dealing with pandemic fatigue and burnout with Mark Danaher. Did I pronounce that okay, Mark?
Yes. Yep,
okay. I think we're all reaching a point where we think it's over, but yet it's not over. We're waiting for vaccines, and I don't know about you, but I'm tired, so I'm looking for hints to deal with this as well. We are recording this, so we will be available through the library at a later date. And I'm just going to read Mark's introduction. If you have any questions, you can type them in the chat. I don't know if you want to open it up after your presentation, Mark, for questions.
Yep. We definitely, even during, if they want to put them in the chat, I'll answer them during or after, whatever works best.
So Mark is the founder of the Mark Danaher Training and Coaching and Retired to the Good Life. So we'll probably have you back for retirement as well. He helps successful business leaders find the work and the life that they love. He helps professionals reduce stress, regain balance, and thrive in their life and career. He's been a career counselor and coach for over 25 years, working with students and adults ranging from high school age through retirement. Through his private practice, Mark presents workshops and training for career professionals, universities, businesses, and organizations throughout the United States. His commitment is to help people find the work and life they love and deserve. He has a passion for helping people reinvent themselves to be ready for their next adventure. So I'm going to be listening with open ears, and I turn the presentation over to you, Mark. Thank you for everybody who's joined us.
Well, thank you so much for having me. I'm really excited. And, if you have a question, please put it in the chat. If we answer it, I'll go along the way, and I'll also leave time at the end as we go through. And, and we keep hoping that pandemic will be over. And not that I want to be Debbie Downer, but, I was reading online today that there are 15 states right now that there's an uptick in the virus, and Connecticut happens to be one of them. Actually, New England, most of New England is in an uptick right now, and they're trying to figure out, is it just kind of a little blip, or is it something that's changing? So, it's something that we have to deal with, and we all have to be going to be dealing with it for a little bit longer. And I think what we're finding is that 60% of the U.S. adults are feeling daily stress and worry. And this is over from last March up until, I think it was December. Gallup did a study looking at that. And so, and when you have kind of stress on a regular basis, it affects your physical, your mental, your spiritual health. It's part of your daily living that you're dealing with. And we're all handling this stress from the unknown, and we need to deal with it and break it. And so what I want to do is kind of get a little bit into worry, stress, and anxiety, and then jump into a little bit of looking at how burnout plays a role, and then look at some self-care of what you can do to really kind of move forward. So as we look at things, worry really happens in our mind. And, what we do is we dwell on the negative thoughts and the things that could go wrong, and then it tends to be repetitive and obsessive. And worry is an important, and it plays a vital role in what we do in terms of how our brains kind of are stimulated and how it goes forward. But there are ways that you can handle worry that it doesn't become all consuming. And what I always try to recommend is that when you're thinking about, this worry and you have it on a regular basis, set up some time to give yourself a break. Set up a specific time to worry, set up a budget that you can go through. If you give yourself a worry budget, an amount of time which you're going to allow for the problem, like I'm going to give it 20 minutes a day at 7 p.m. and I'm just going to work at that point and go through things so that I can really look at all those avenues going through. And so you're really directing your thoughts at that moment. And when you notice that you're worried about something, push yourself to come up with the next step or take action. Don't let the worry take over, and write your worries down. So if they're coming up, write them down, put a little journal together. And then, kind of the research has shown that just 8 to 10 minutes of writing can calm those obsessive thoughts as you go through. So it's really being in action as it all comes together that's going to make a huge difference in how we deal with this. And then if we look at stress, right? Stress is a physical reaction to an outside event. It can be from a work deadline or a pandemic event that we've been going through. And stress is a natural response to a threat. And symptoms of stress include like rapid heartbeat, pains in your body. You can have kind of those clammy palms, shallow breath. And there's two stresses that I want to kind of talk about. The acute stress, where you're worried about a deadline and you get that rush and it wears off once that situation's resolved. And then what we've been dealing with over the last year is that chronic stress, on the other hand. Your body stays in this flight or fight mode continuously because the situation isn't getting resolved. Where now we're starting to see some of those, kind of end of the tunnel. People are getting vaccinated and we're doing some things, but it's still that chronic stress as we go through and put things together. So a couple of things to think about, ways to reduce your stress. Just get moving, walking, exercise. Focus on what you can control. I'm going to share a slide coming up later on that's going to show you what you can control and what things are out of your control. And I think that's very important because stress is normal. We need to accept it, but we have to be able to deal with it. And the other part is, the tough part with today's world is that we can see everybody on social media, Facebook, Instagram, everybody's out there. And everybody looks like they're doing wonderful things, right? And they can handle it well and so forth. But don't compare yourself to other people. I think that's the important part as you go through. We each handle stress and things differently. And you want to make sure that you take that into your own account when you're going through it. And we think about anxiety, right? So remember how stress is that natural response to a threat? Well, anxiety is the same thing, except there's no threat. Anxiety is in some ways a response to a false alarm. And it's basically when you show up to work and somebody, gives you a look and all of a sudden you're like, oh, why are they looking at me that way? And you start all these responses, just like in stress, because you're telling yourself that, this person or your boss is upset with you or your job might be at risk. So you want to watch as you go through how it all comes together. And ways to reduce that is limit your sugar intake, your caffeine, your alcohol intake. Just focus. I try to do a lot of work in my own family, what I do, but also with my clients, is just be mindful. Focus on the moment, like just wiggling your toes, breathing. It makes a huge difference that if you can distract yourself with different things, it makes a big difference, whether it be music, whether you're just going to do a quick walk or jump rope, even just taking a piece of Velcro and just feeling that piece of Velcro. Because anxiety happens in your mind and your body. So trying to think your way out of it won't help. That's why getting those physical things or the listening will change up the way you go through it. So kind of in summary of these, as we jump into a little bit more of that pandemic burnout and fatigue, remember, worry happens in the mind, stress happens in your body, and anxiety happens in your mind and your body. So in small doses, we can handle it, right? We can be positive, we can move forward. But, right now we've been overwhelmed, right? We've been overwhelmed in terms of what we can do with. We have too much worry, too much stress. We're too anxious. But I'm going to share some steps that you can take to set up some boundaries and other pieces for self-care. They'll help reduce some of that so that you can see a better way out. And if we think about burnout, right? If we take that stress, right? And typically that may happen once in a while. But burnout is more of an emotional, physical, and mental exhaustion caused by that excessive and prolonged stress. And most of us have days when we feel helpless or overloaded or unappreciated. I mean, that happens. We get out of bed, we kind of just use the strength to get out and feel like most of the time, that we may be burned out. But burnout's a gradual process and it doesn't happen overnight, but it can creep up on us. And the signs and symptoms are subtle at first, and really what it comes down to is it gets worse over time. And you want to think about those early symptoms as red flags that something's wrong that need to be addressed. And if you don't pay attention to them and actively reduce them, they can turn into a major breakdown. And so that's why you're going to get these little things where, you have depleted energy levels, or, you seem to get that cold every once in a while. You want to kind of start to think about that. Am I taking care of myself? Am I doing those things to get into a better spot? Because if we think about pandemic fatigue, right, this occurs when something that we thought was going to be short-lived, right? Remember when it went out in March, a lot of schools are like, oh, we're just taking 2 weeks off and we'll be back in. Or people thought, oh, we'll be out of the office for a while. I mean, there's many people I work with and talk to who have not been back to their office in over a year. And the point being is they probably won't go back for another 6 months for many of them. So there's a numerous daily changes in life that kind of get into this overload and mental exhaustion. And you grow tired of the safety measures over time because it takes a lot of effort to think about, I got to put on my mask. I got to make sure I have hand sanitizer. I got to stay 6 feet apart. When am I going to go shopping? Is it a high time when there's a lot of people? Or am I going to go when there's a lower time? And so you're trying to think back, of those days compared to pre-COVID days when we could just get up and do whatever we wanted. There's a lot more planning in life now. We have to think about everything from, what we do when we step out of the house. Did I pack a mask? Did I bring the hand sanitizer? Sometimes we have people say, do I have my gloves? It changes your routine. It changes your work routine. There's sometimes that long lineup as it goes through and thinking, is this worth it? And you're really trying to put it all together because it changes how we cope with things. And the activities we would engage is to give us kind of a sense of connectedness, enjoyment, and hope have all been changed or put off limits. You think about all the holidays that we missed or we did through Zoom, or you did outside around a fire, a bonfire, just because you couldn't be in the house. It changed up everything as we went through. Birthday parties, celebrating somebody's birthday and also celebrating somebody's death. And, it's changed the way that we've tried to connect with people. Normally we'd be in the library right now having a presentation and talking, and I could engage in the audience and kind of see the body language. And now it's a little bit harder. You can still see cameras, but you can't put everything together as it goes through. So what I want to think about is, if you were to look to the left or the right? So you got three people, right? You have one, to the right, you have one to the left. One out of the three of you is experiencing stress each week. Now, if you look to the person next to you, one out of the two of you has experienced some form of burnout and pandemic fatigue right now. And that's amazing as we go through this. Stress happens, and we all deal with stress on a regular basis. But when we start to get to that burnout fatigue piece, that's when it's starting to show. And, the studies are really looking at 60 to 70% are really getting into that pandemic fatigue. And it's real, it's strong. And people, as you hear in different places, they're tired of wearing their masks. They're tired of thinking about, I got to social distance. And a lot of states are opening up and people are excited to go to restaurants. And some people are afraid because they're wondering what's going to happen. So there's a lot going on as we go through this. So if we think about the different signs of pandemic fatigue, you could be eating or sleeping more or less, depending on how it goes. You may have what they call that brain fog, right? You just have trouble focusing and trying to put it all together. You're a little bit more edgy or nervous in terms of how you normally act or feel. You kind of snap, those quick snap arguments of when it goes through, and you lack the motivation. You're not really geared to the way you were. And you have these racing thoughts. You wake up and you just can't go back to sleep. Or you may be pulling away from others. So think about what may be showing up for you as it goes through. And it doesn't mean that we have to have all of these. There may be one or two that are really pulling at you as it comes together. And what we want to think about is, abnormal is kind of the new normal at the moment as we go through. And it's been here a year, and we're still hoping at some point that it'll kind of change and we'll get back to that new normal. But what we want to make sure is that we have to start understanding why so many people feel frazzled. Knowing why we feel that everything is abnormal can help us feel normal. We know that there's kind of two stress, right? We have the long-term effects in the mental well-being and physical health, which is kind of that intense and prolonged stress. And we have both. We have both that short kind of mental and we have the physical, and it's really kind of gnawing at us as we go forward. So what can we do to reduce the stress, the burnout, and the fatigue, right? I think that's the important part. Helping others is the way we help ourselves. I think that's an important part. Looking out for your neighbors, reaching out to family, doing Zoom meetings, different things that you can do from that point. But the other part is you want to develop a routine, right? A plan to reduce the effects. I think that's an important part as you go through anything as we put all this together. Because we used to have a life that we had no worries. We could walk outside, we could get on a plane, we could go travel, we could go to the grocery store. And now everything requires a change in the way that we look at things. I used to have a group of friends who would always get together and we'd go to different breweries, and we go to different restaurants, and we do it every 2 weeks just to stay in touch. And that's kind of fallen apart. We've done some Zoom meetings, but part of the exploring was just going to see new parts of Connecticut and new restaurants as we went through. So it's trying to put all that together. So you have to think about, how do you put a new routine together to make it work? So one of the things I want you to think about, this was sent out this afternoon, and what it is, it's a life planning wheel. And there's 10 areas as you look at this. There's life's purpose, work and career, social network, life satisfaction, your health. You're looking at attitude towards change, adaptability, and then leisure, interests, family and relations, and financial well-being. And what I want you to do, this will give you some focus too, to help you look at some other areas besides what we talk about, is you want to rate yourself on a scale of 1 to 10. So 10 being the highest level of satisfaction. So you want to think about how fully you've been, living and dealing with these 10 areas, especially over the last year or even the last 6 months. Are you taking care of yourself? Are you keeping your mind active? Are you nurturing your life's purpose of what you love to do? You might have been hit by COVID, and financially it may not have been good. So what are the things from that end? And then think about those daily basis of the vital emotions of fear, pain, joy, love, peace. How are those in terms of putting things together? So put that together. And what I want you to do is circle the number that reflects how much satisfaction you have in these areas. And then draw a line to connect your numbers on the scale with each 10 categories. And then this becomes the wheel or a snapshot of your life, in or out of balance at this moment. So I'm going to give you a moment or two if you have it. Don't spend too much time on it. Just use it. You have it now. You can use it on a regular basis. But go in there and take a look at and circle the numbers and then connect it. And it may not look like a perfect wheel. Understand that. There may be some lower areas and some higher areas. So just take a moment right now to do that. And then we'll move forward. I'll give you like 2 or 3 minutes. I don't want you to spend too much time. I want you to just kind of go with your gut response as you go through. And if you don't have it, just check your email as you go through, because that was sent out today that you'll have. And just remember, as you're doing this, go with your gut reaction, 10 being the highest, 1 being the lowest. Go with your gut reaction of what you feel. And there are some definitions there you can read, but where do you feel that your family life is? Where do you feel financially? How you feel connected into your life's purpose? How's your social network? As you go through. Spirituality, that could be religion, that could just be connectedness. It could be anything. It doesn't have to be a specific piece from that end. How do you feel with your health and wellness? Close relationships, adventure. Have you had any? That's been the other part as you go through. So just take a minute to finish up. I'm going to just kind of move forward and talk a little bit about some things as it comes together and related to this. Be careful what lurks in your own life. Sometimes we get caught up in a bad trend that we can change. And I look at different times of how we have our own attitudes, how we have our own things that sometimes we just can't get out of our own way. And I just remember one of the things I always looked at was my mom, and I love her to death, and she's a wonderful woman. And I'm honest with her in terms of sharing this. She has an Eeyore personality. Why bother? It's not going to change. The tail's just going to fall off anyways. Those are things that happen. But how do you want to approach it differently? And I think that's the important part. We're in a pandemic. We have opportunities. And what can we do to make the best of it as we go through? And you want to celebrate the little things and enjoy each day. And, you're probably looking at this picture going, what is this? This is in the Rocky Mountains. And it's a privy, right? It's a privy at 8,000 feet when we're hiking up. And it had one of the most beautiful views that I've ever seen. And that was like, you want to find this salvation of a bathroom at 8,000 feet when you're thinking you're not going to find one. And here it is. And so you just want to enjoy the little things and see how you can celebrate, life as you go through and be present in every moment. So if we think about our view of life, which parts of your life are working best right now? Where can you improve? And you don't want to jump into all of them. I think that's the important part. 1 or 2 areas, that's all you want to do, right? Pick one area, work on it for a week, maybe 2 weeks. And what can you do to improve that? How can you move it from a 6 to a 7 or a 6 to an 8 as you go through, to change your focus, to change what you can go through? Because it makes a huge difference on how life moves forward for you. You want to focus on what's within your control, and you want to put your energy there. You can reduce your fear of, contracting or spreading the virus by following public health guidelines. Wear a mask, wash your hands, maintain social distancing, watch for symptoms. But the other part in your own life, you can control your words, your actions, your behavior, your attitude, your body language, what you do. You can't change what other people say. You can only control how you take it in. And that's the most important part, is they don't have control over what happens to you. You have control over what happens to you. And I think that's the important part as you go through. We're going to talk a little bit about news and media as we go through. And it's important that you take some time to reflect and accept. Take time to check in with yourself, reflect on how you're doing. If you feel, irritated or impatient or angry or suffering from fatigue, anxiety, or depression, accept that all these responses are normal, and understand during such a difficult time, it's okay. We can't change what we're not aware of, but it all starts with awareness. Awareness has to be the cornerstone of any mental health toolkit. We need to give ourselves permission to acknowledge that we're not feeling 100% normal. And it makes sense that we're tired, we're scared, we're anxious. These are common reactions, but we need to take care of ourselves. That's the important part. And the first piece is you need to set boundaries. And this is the important part, is setting boundaries, makes a huge difference. An important part of mental health and well-being. Boundaries can be physical and or emotional. They can range from being loose to rigid, with healthy boundaries often kind of falling somewhere in between. And we need to establish that work-life boundaries if we're working from home or on the clock or not. If you own your own business, is there a way to turn off or be focused on your family and home life? And I think the best thing to think about is, if you're working from home, you have an opportunity to take care of yourself. So really what it comes down to as you go through things is set the time of when you're going to start work. Set the time when you're going to end work. And then from that point, it's your time or family time before that. Make sure you take your lunch hour or half hour, your breaks. And then when the clock ends at 5 o'clock or 4 o'clock or whatever it may be, you're done at that time. It's so important, because otherwise it's a blur. Then you're not having that time with your family or yourself or your partner or your kids. And then on the other side, all you're doing is work, and you're never getting away. So set the boundaries as the first piece as it goes through. Another piece is fake the commute. There are so many people that are still working from home. And the commute is used to mentally prepare for the day. The time to walk out of the house, leave behind whatever is going on. And now you're not doing that every day. And the same was true at the end of the day. You walk out of the office and you leave that behind and begin to prepare for home life. But you can create your own transition or buffer zone, even if you don't have the normal drive or the public transportation trip to work. Whether you go for a walk, drive your car, take a bike ride, or time out of your house, you need a morning and a night ritual to make that transition to your next role. There's something in the fake commute where there's a mental process that goes on in planning for the day and then letting go of the day. Commuting provides an opportunity to adjust to a different role, for example, from parent to worker, and the habit gives your brain a bit of a break. It's a physical pause in the day, and it's that benefit that we're missing. And you can create your own transportation or buffer zone, even if you're not having that normal drive. Think about what's the thing that I missed most about my commute? What were the things that were good for me? The mock commute can be simple. It could be the act of drinking a cup of coffee and washing out the cup and then switching gears. It could be a simple walk down the street. Think about what you can do to make that transition. And that makes a big difference in the way that our brain functions and how we're moving forward. Because without that commute, you're just simply blurring things together. So that's another piece of setting up that boundary. But that commute does so much more mentally for us, and it's healthy for us whether it's listening to a podcast, listening to music, just a chance to see the scenery, go take a quick drive, take 5 minutes to drive somewhere and come back. Anything that will help you set up that difference in what goes on. Exercise. And it doesn't have to be exercise where I go join a gym. It's the best thing for coping. Any exercise, a simple walk, running, bike ride, it releases endorphins. It gets some of the adrenaline out when we're frustrated and so forth, but just get moving. But take time each day to move. That's the big thing. And it doesn't have to be this 4-mile trek. It could be a simple mile walk. It could be a half-mile walk. You can build up as you go forward. There's a lot of great videos online. There's a lot of great ways to kind of get involved and get connected. You can set up a group, and get on and do Zoom and then exercise together. You could even get on, if you didn't want to walk with somebody, you could walk with a friend and put your headphones on and walk with them and talk to them, but do something to get moving. It makes a huge difference in how your body reacts and getting that stress out as you go through. Talking, right? We used to be able to just go down the street and have a cup of coffee and sit with somebody and talk, or go out to dinner. And now, we have to make sure that we stay connected, and it really helps to do the talking. Just find a place, find somewhere where you can do it, what you want to do, whether it be on the phone, whether it be Zoom. But think about this. Before we used to be able to say things out, we could, find the right places and times, but we did it. But if we ignore the feelings that don't make them go away, right? We just keep pushing it away. Oh, it's no big deal. It's no big deal. We're not connecting. It's like trying to hold a beach ball underwater. Eventually you lose control and it pops out, and you can't, control where it's going or who it hits. You need to talk. We're social creatures. We're social humans as we go through. So really what it comes down to, it's important that we set up time to connect with people. And the only limit is you. I think really what it comes down to, we have control of what we can do. We have other stressors that get in the way. And sometimes it's our thought process, and sometimes it's other pieces. But what can you do to get into a better place so that you can deal and reduce this fatigue and the stress and the anxiety and the worry, and thinking about those different pieces is a huge piece of how we go through. So if we think about self-care, right? This is some of the things I've been talking a little bit with the boundaries and talking about exercise and faking the commute. It's any activity that we do to deliberately, in order to take care of ourselves. It could be mentally, emotionally, physically. And it's important that we do it multiple times in a day. It doesn't mean that we're going to be doing it for 4 hours, but we want to have something in the morning and the afternoon. It reduces our stress and anxiety. It improves our mood. It's a key to good relationships with others and everything else that we do. And it isn't selfish. I think some people worry, well, I got to take care of everybody else. If you don't take care of yourself first, you're not going to be good for anybody else. That's the most important part as you go through. I know with my wife and kids, if I don't exercise and meditate and do other things that I need to do in the morning, I'm not going to be good for them in the long term. I'm going to be irritated. I'm not going to be happy. I'm going to let the stress, the anxiety, the worries build up. And that's not going to be good. So making sure that you take care of yourself is an important part. And look, stick to the basics. Over time, you're going to find your own rhythm and routine. You're going to be able to implement more and identify more particular forms of self-care that work for you. And self-care needs to be something you actively plan rather than something that just happens. It has to be an active choice, and you must treat it as such. And I know there's times I'll be like, oh, I'm not worried about it. Oh, don't worry. I get so much on my plate. I got to get this done. I got to do that. And then I realize like 2 weeks later, 3 weeks later, I'm going, why am I so miserable? What is going on? And I look back at my last 2 or 3 weeks. I didn't meditate. I didn't walk. I didn't do the things I needed to take care of myself. So once you do that, and you start to add in the activities of choice and you see it, you're going to put it into your calendar. You're going to make sure that your family knows, or your partner, whoever you're with, and that you're going to actively look for those opportunities to practice the self-care. And what I often emphasize to my clients is keeping a conscious mind is what counts. In other words, if you don't see something with self-care, or you don't do something in order to take care of yourself, it won't work as such. Be aware of what you do, why you do it, how it feels, and what the outcomes are. It makes such a difference as you go through. And we have to take charge of our own well-being. We can't expect even the most caring employer to be responsible for keeping us comfortable. Part of our professional obligation is to strive for our own well-being. Setting obtainable well-being goals and implement that plan is critical. These goals might include exercise, meditation, nutrition, yoga, mindfulness, could be prayer, could be gardening, connections with others, music, reading, any other form of restoration. You just have to find the right match for you and do it on a regular basis. And make sure to build in those 2 self-care breaks each day. And I say at least 15 minutes. Put it on your schedule, make sure it's there as you go through. And I'm going to share 2 things. And I actually have one more that I just remembered, but I'll put it all together. Weekly planning. It doesn't mean you have to plan your whole calendar out, but build in, as you notice in my weekly planner here, I put in key things that I want to make sure that I cover on Monday. I cover in, and I have written in there, so I put in my self-care on each day so that I'm putting it together. And then I have my top priorities I want to carry out. I don't lay everything out in terms of these are the exact times, but I know these are the key things I want to accomplish each day, and it puts together. And then I use it as, are there other things I want to add to my list? The other part is you think about a couple of different things, right? Is that as we look at these different pieces, it's important to kind of keep in mind of what can stand out for you. So another piece that I do is I actually have my calendar. I have an electronic calendar, but I'm more of a paper person. So I put together my kind of daily action plan for each week. I have them put together. And what I do is I have my morning miracle that I follow through. So I do affirmations. I have a day 1 gratitude that I do, exercise, visualization. I listen to a podcast or audiobook. It doesn't mean I listen to the whole thing. It could be 5 minutes. I do a little bit of mindfulness or meditation. And then at the end, I try to do an afternoon meditation and a nightly affirmation. And if you look in the yellow, those are my 3 goals of the day. I don't do more than that. And I try to time block. So I'm not filling up every moment of the day, but I know I'm going to carry through different pieces. So one of the things I want to just share with you, if you want, I'll send you a couple of different things. I put a little link in the chat box. I'll send you the PDF of the PowerPoint. I can send you these 2 planners. But one other thing I did, and I totally forgot about this when I was doing this for some reason. I have a 2-page kind of graphic illustration of different self-care activities you can do. And it's just a PDF, and it just gives you, I think it's like 32 of my favorite self-care activities that I've tried and done and I like to go back to. And so I'll share that with you. And I'll also share a daily gratitude journal or a weekly one too that you can go through, but just covers each day of just being thankful for different pieces in your life. And with that, gratitude, right? I think gratitude is a huge piece that we can use for our own self-care. It can be 2 or 3 minutes, but they recommend if you can do 5 minutes a day in gratitude, it will increase your long-term well-being by more than 10%. It's going to make you happier, you're healthier, it's going to boost your career, strengthen your emotions, and you'll find more people like you. Gratitude makes us nicer, more trusting, more social, more appreciative, and it helps us make more friends and deepen our relationships, and can even improve your partnerships or your marriages as you go through. So take that into account. It doesn't take that much. I use the Day One app, and the one thing I like about the Day One app, it's on a smartphone. I like it in the fact that I can include a photo from the day or a photo from my family, and then I can write about it, and it's for free. And then I get reminders. That's what I really love, is that for the last 3 years, I get reminders on, March 18th, here's what happened, and I can go back and read about it. It's just a nice way to kind of bring a smile to my face as I go through. Mindfulness. I think this is a huge piece to kind of help us get back and focus. We can definitely put ourselves through a lot of unnecessary misery, projecting into the future, ruminating about the past. If we just kind of take life day by day, we can't change the past. Hal Elrod, who talked about the morning miracle that I use and think about, talked about when he got into a car accident when he was 23, he had about a 20-minute session where he just let all his anger out. He just got everything out. And then from that point forward, he just focused on what he could do each day. And he didn't wallow in the past. And he said, that's the most important part, is that we got to get things out, but we can't change the past. We can only move forward. So he said he tried being in the moment. And I think that's the best part. Be there with the person or the place wherever you are. And, if you find that you get distracted a lot, like you can't really stay asleep a lot, you wake up and your mind's racing, try sitting in a chair and focus on your breathing for 5 minutes. Just use 5 minutes a day. Set the timer on a watch or on your phone. Focus on the breath coming in, right? In through your nose and then out through your mouth. And just keep focusing on that breath. And if you get distracted, come back to the breath again. So, oh, wait, I think I got to get something for dinner. Oh, no, wait, come back to the breath. And that's okay. And you'll find as you practice each day, once or twice a day, you're going to find that you're going to be able to get more focused. And so that when you find that time where you may not be able to get focused, you can use that to kind of get yourself back in and to bring you back into the moment, I think is the most part. I always try to use with my clients, be where your feet are, right? I think that's the most important part, because right now we're in this meeting. I'm sharing some information. We're not worried about anything else. Or you're meeting with a friend. Be with that friend, right? Be with them. It's so hard, but we get so, squirrel and all of a sudden we're out the window, or squirrel and all of a sudden my mind races here. And that's an important part. Try to bring things back in. Think about a digital water cooler. You've probably already done this. You set up the virtual webcam room through Zoom, Meets, Teams, whatever it may be. Plan an online gaming tournament during a lunch hour or at night with family and friends. You could even watch a movie together, right? You both have the same accounts and you go through and you're just there and sharing reactions. But be careful not to plan mandatory fun. It should be an open invitation. Say, hey, look, we're going to do a Kahoots at this time, this day. You're more than welcome to come. Look, we're social creatures by nature. Being alone and feeling isolated can be stressful. So it's crucial to connect with others during this time, during this pandemic. And although you should limit your physical contact with people outside your household, there's other ways you can connect. You can do phone calls, the video meetings, social media, right? You could write letters. Imagine that, writing a letter, writing a postcard, take a live class online, attend online religious services. And I know they're also in person, but think about ways that you can connect with people. I think that's the most important part. And it makes a big difference. I know with everything opening up and being vaccinated or getting the second shot coming up, and some of my close friends are going to have that also, we're looking to go to some outdoor venues to connect once again and to see some new places. So try to think about how you can keep that connection going forward. Positive self-talk. Sometimes fear and anxiety can make our minds leap to the worst case scenarios, even as most unlikely. You might become plagued with what-if thoughts, trying to catch those negative thoughts and replace them with more realistic statements. For example, replace your thought about acquiring COVID-19 with about what you're doing to stay safe. You have control over all your thoughts, and you can change, these negative thoughts into more positive pieces. One of the things that I try to use and get more positive talks is I use affirmations. And it's what I want and I hope to see in the world every morning to reaffirm who I am and who I want to be. So I'll just share a little bit so you get a better idea, but you can write up anything that you want. You can actually go online and see a lot of different samples as it goes through. So I talk about my true success, loving my family, loving my work, living my purpose, being present and grateful for every moment. And I say these out loud, even though I'm not saying them to anybody, I always say them out loud. So purpose, my life's purpose is to educate and inspire the lives of others. It starts with achieving everything I want in my own life and never settling for anything less than I can be, do, or have, so I can pay it forward and learn through experience how to help others achieve everything they want. Productivity. To maximize productivity, I'm using time blocking and focusing on the one thing that will move me and my business forward on a daily, weekly, and monthly basis to help me stay focused. And then I'll share one more, reflection. I'm investing time in reflection, getting a deeper perspective by asking questions like, what am I doing well that I need to acknowledge for myself? Or what can I be doing better? And what am I not even thinking about doing that I should be? And so I use these every morning. I probably have about 10 of them. And I change them every couple of months as I go through. But it allows me to set myself up for success. I think it was Jerry Seinfeld that said, um, the best way that you can start out the day, have your first success, is make your bed. And I think that's what I try to do, is I try to help get those things set up so I'm not going into with a negative flare. Acknowledge and accept emotions. Look, I'm going to be, if you're a Seinfeld fan, I'm not a Serenity Now person. Everything's perfect and everything will work out. I'm not always happy. I have moments where I'm down, but I think what you want to do is accept and acknowledge this, because the abrupt change in daily life can lead to feelings of disappointment and loss. The lack of opportunities to connect, in person to celebrate important milestones, having to cancel or postpone future plans can contribute to an overwhelming sense of grief. And it's important to acknowledge and accept our own emotions without self-criticism and judgment. Our feelings are valid. Try not to minimize or discount them. Rather, seek to understand the source of your frustration. And sometimes, if you're finding it difficult to cope or reach out to family, friends, support groups, it helps. We've had many different tragedies occur and many things that have happened, but how do you handle that and know how to move forward? And it's difficult going through. I lost my mom back in June, and it wasn't due to COVID, but it changed the way that we would celebrate her life and how we connected with family and so forth. But we learned to accept that, and we learned ways that we could celebrate her and still mourn and grieve what we needed to, and ways to move forward from that point. Develop new daily routines. It's important not to get stuck in life. Adjust routines, and then kind of stick to them, see how they're doing, and make some adjustments. Use some ideas to kind of develop your own morning or daily routine. And like I've been talking about, but my morning routine is mindfulness or meditation. I do some journaling. I try to get out and walk. I do some podcasts or reading. I have the affirmations, which you heard, and I do some visualization. You're thinking, wow, that sounds like a lot. You can do this in 6 minutes, or you can do it in 60 minutes. There's some days that I got on and it's like a minute of mindfulness. I do some quick 3 things that I'm grateful for. I may just do and say, all right, I'm going to walk, and I'm going to walk 5 minutes and listen to a podcast. I always do my affirmations, and visualization is, where do I want to see myself? How do I see my day going? And trying to put things in a different perspective as it all comes through. Take a vacation from the news. The bombardment of negative and sensational headlines can be overwhelming. There's little need to know the daily tally of, the infections, or unless your job depends on it, the political discord, there's still, we as a nation just can't understand that we have differing views and be okay with it. And so, when you go on, the news stations sell negative news. That's what sells. So get a chance to let your brain rest and take in other things like reading a book, meditating, doing nothing, going outdoors. Get away from your computer or TV. Anxiety can be built up from media exposure. Limit your consumption. Maybe pick 1 or 2 trusted sources that you're going to rely on and screen out the others. I don't watch news broadcasts anymore. I go online and I look at certain media outlets for key local events so that I can read and know what's going on, along with national events. Watching the news is not my excitement anymore. It takes me down. So watching that and going through is an important part. So find ways that maybe you can take a break or limit what's going in. And this one, my wife really has done a lot of research on this, but blue light, right? So blue light from all the different screens we're on, right? And so it's hard to know if it's 100%. I do have my blue light filters on my screens here and on my phone. And that, if you're using some of the blue light screens or glasses, that it can increase your sleep quality. There are others saying that, if you avoid the use of devices before bedtime, it helps. That can reduce headaches, eye strain, because we're always on the computer a lot now for meetings, especially if you're working remote. And so if you can kind of think about ways that maybe either reduce your screen time or the ways that you do, it may reduce that digital eye strain as you go through. And this is something that it can affect your body in different ways. So I'm not saying this is 100%. You can see the research going both ways, but I make a suggestion as you go through. And it's helped. I know it's helped with me. I feel better as it goes through, and others, they're like, I don't really see it. Monitor your social media, meaning don't do the doom scrolling. You can jump on Facebook, you can jump on Instagram, you can jump on Pinterest, you can jump on Twitter, and you could just be scrolling and scrolling and scrolling. And all of a sudden you realize it's 30 minutes later. And basically what you're doing is you're going to get into some of those negative stories, and you're going to see that kind of keep on going and some of that dread that comes up. So try to limit your social media play in terms of what you go on. And if you're always hooked to check it, remove the apps, make it harder that you can only do it through your laptop or your computer. Try scheduling 2 5 to 10 minute check-in sessions each day. Other than that, you stay off. So you can check in the morning and the afternoon, whatever it may be, but you limit what you're getting because it makes a big difference on what's happening and how it goes through. The other part is create new traditions, right? Usher in more joy into your days by creating new traditions. You have something fun to look forward to. You might even decide to keep it once the pandemic has passed. You might have set aside Sunday night for self-care, and making sure that you do a longer self-care. Do anything that makes you feel good physically, mentally, or emotionally. You might focus on a hobby such as playing guitar, scrapbooking, or doing something for your body, such as getting a facial or going for a run. You might try to do family Friday nights. Could be movie night or a picnic in the backyard. And especially now up here, we're getting warmer weather, and we're getting out of the winter. So that's going to make a huge difference in just getting out. Organize a video call with friends in the midweek check-in. But be creative and come up with ideas that work best for you, I think is an important part. And then service, right? Volunteering. There are still ways you can volunteer. You kind of choose to be the kind of person you want to be, and you can become that person. And basically you can change overnight. But volunteering is mentally healthy. You could do it online. You could read books to children. You could record yourself reading a book, and they could be used in some of the elementary schools. I know my daughter volunteers at our local food pantry, and they're still taking volunteers in. There are different ways to give back and get connected. And it makes a huge difference because you feel better by, contributing to society as it goes through. And then pay it forward, right? They say the best cure for depression is a random act of kindness. The simplest way to define pay it forward is that when someone does something for you, instead of paying that person back, you pass it on to another person. So we remember we have all the stories of like at Dunkin' Donuts and Starbucks where somebody buys the coffee for the person in line behind you, and then all of a sudden they buy the coffee for the next person. And then it becomes this chain reaction. Just pay it forward. Little acts of kindness with neighbors, just making some cookies or dropping something off, or just makes a big difference in the way people are and what they do. And so just kind of keep that in mind as it all comes together. And then everyone's unique and each experience is different, right? We each handle burnout and fatigue a little differently. But my hope is that by the ideas I shared can be incorporated into your daily life. You need to choose what works well for you and your family. Be kind to yourself as you're trying to adjust this ever-changing challenge. One step each day, and connect with others for support and communication. We're almost there, but nobody knows 100% yet. And so I think the best way is support your neighbors, support your family, but to take small steps to make sure you're taking care of yourself as you go through. And so I'd be happy to answer any questions that people may have. I do have the link in the chat if you want to get those different handouts I mentioned. I'll send those out as you go through. And hopefully you found this helpful as you think about where you're at in your own life. There's many more self-care things out there. And the other part is just try to gain a focus, of what you can do. Sometimes we can't change the world. We can only work with who we are, and we can change ourselves, and we can control what we say and hear, but we can't control others and people outside of our lives.
Great hints, Mark. I appreciate it. And I try to incorporate a lot of what you said, but it's baby steps, baby steps.
Yep. Baby steps are important. You can't do it all at once. You take one step at a time, one step each day, and then it starts to build up and help you out. If
anybody else has anything they want to share or ask. So very comprehensive and very helpful. I've got all my notes here too.
Okay. Well, I just want to thank you. I mean, I just really appreciate it if I can help people out as they go forward. Just really think about what works best for you and find one or two things that work and really try to incorporate it twice a day. I think that's the best thing that goes through, because we're hardest on ourselves. And especially as we go through, we'll just push through things instead of taking that 10 minutes or 15 minutes that allow us to regain our energy and focus and allow to get rid of some of that stress so we don't carry it on to the next thing.
So very important. Stop and breathe.
Yes.
Well, and I want to thank everybody else for coming. I don't know if anybody has any comments or hands, or I'm really glad we taped this because I will be watching it again. You just have to have the constant reminders of what you need to do.
Well, excellent. And if anybody wants to reach out, my email's there. I'd be more than happy to, if you had a question afterwards, you're more than helpful too. I'll send the PDF out and I'll get the handouts out to everybody as it goes through too. So thank you.
Wonderful, Mark. Everybody's saying thank you. Thank you. Thank you all for coming.
Excellent.
Mindfulness.
All right.
Mark. Thanks for your time.
Oh, thank you. Have a great day.
Thank you again, everybody. Take care.
Bye-bye.
Thanks.